Ecamm Live has just released the latest beta version of their software. Ecamm for Zoom now includes integrated Zoom functionality directly in the Ecamm software. Let's get into it. So first off, let's just stress that this is beta software, so use with caution, and like all beta software, it may be prone to having some quirks and bugs. So the Ecamm for Zoom beta software does rely on you having an Ecamm Live Pro account as a minimum, and you will need an Apple M1 chip or above for this software integration to work. It's also recommended to have a Pro level or above Zoom account. Pro level Zoom accounts will give you a minimum of 720p HD video quality, providing you get that set up with Zoom support, and then business and enterprise will go into 1080p video. But how do you get all this integrated first off with Ecamm Live? So let's take a look at how the interface now works and what you need to do to initially get this set up. The great thing about Ecamm for Zoom is that it has the Zoom application built in right into Ecamm, so you don't have to download a separate application, which is great. But first off, we'll need to link our account, and you do that by clicking this button here in this new Zoom panel. If you don't see the Zoom panel, then just go to Window in Ecamm Live, and down here at the bottom, you will see that there is a new window menu, which is called Zoom. Click on that and you will see this here. We just need to link our accounts together. So I'm going to click on this link Zoom account and it will give me a dialog pop-up box here. It's going to want to sign into Zoom US and link my account. So let's quickly do that and I'll show you what it looks like once the account has been linked. So once the account has been linked, you'll see that we get this pop-up box saying Zoom account linked. Click OK, and then you'll see we have the account holder here at the top, new meeting, join by ID, or scheduled event, and so on. So this is your main window here for controlling Zoom, and then once we start Zoom, you'll see another window pop up in a second. If you do want to unlink your account, you can just click on the account holder's face and then click log out there. All right, so now let's take a look at some of the new preferences contained within Ecamm for Zoom before we start to set up a meeting and bring on our Zoom guests. There's a couple of new additions to the preferences within this version of software, so let's take a look at that right now. Let's open up preferences, hit Command, comma to bring up your preferences in Ecamm. You'll see that there is a new menu to the far right here called Zoom. And this gives you some control now how you want your Zoom participants to join the meeting and also some audio and other settings. So let's quickly go through what these mean. So the first one is auto admit Zoom participants. You can automatically admit participants to your Zoom meeting. You've got some preferences here. Known participants are always. I keep mine set to never. You can also add Zoom participants to Ecamm camera sources. So that means when you've got some camera placeholders set up within your Ecamm production, you can automatically get them mapped to that. Again, I leave mine to never, and I want to manually bring them in and put them where I want. Now, there are two options here for Zoom capture mode. One is live streaming and one is recording. And effectively, what that means is it's just the way that Zoom is going to inform your participants on the status of what's happening within your production. So there are two options, live streaming and recording. If we go back to the preferences, if we click on live streaming, what that means is when your guests join an Ecamm production, even if you are not live streaming or recording, it's going to just simply inform your participants that there is a stream in progress, a production in progress, just to let them know that they're actually in another software, which is Ecamm, and their faces and whatever they're presenting could be shown elsewhere. So it's a Zoom setting that's not configurable or changeable at this particular point in time, but just be aware that your participants will see if it's set to live streaming, you are now live streaming to ecammlive.com. So that's a dialog box that will pop up. If you set this to recording, then they are going to get the standard Zoom meeting is in recorded message pop up. And again, it's just Zoom's privacy and the way that it's informing your guests that are coming into your Ecamm production that they are either being live streamed, recorded, or at least being shown in a third-party production. The other one is Zoom audio processing. So this is an important one in terms of how you want your audio to be routed and set up within Zoom. By default, it is set to disabled, which means that any Zoom settings are overwritten, which means that by default, the original Sound for Musicians setting will be enabled in Zoom, giving you the best audio quality. Now you have another option to change this from this drop-down menu here, and that is embedded. So that means that you would then be able to configure your own Zoom settings from the normal Zoom window. So you can change that at your leisure. I leave mine to disabled. The other one is to add Zoom chat to the Ecamm comments and reactions. This is a great feature. So that means now that all Zoom chat messages are integrated into the comments and reactions menu within Ecamm. So if you're multi-streaming, you're going to get Zoom comments coming in from your guests, YouTube comments, and so on. Another great addition. And the last one is manual audio mode. And this setting is going to not use Ecamm's internal routing for audio and mixing. It's assuming you've got something like a Rodecaster Pro, where you're going to be routing and mixing your Zoom, Ecamm, and other audio sources manually. People that use Loopback as well, that is something that you may want to consider. Again, I leave this as disabled, and if you want to learn more, there is a checkbox here or a dialog box that you can click on to hit learn more. So those are the Ecamm Live new preferences within Zoom. Some great additions. Now let's work out how to get our guests on, set that up, and show you what it looks like. Creating a new Zoom event or starting a previously scheduled one is just the same in Ecamm for Zoom as it is in the original Zoom app, because Ecamm Live has Zoom natively built into it. Wonderful. Let's click on Live Demo and show you what I mean. So in your Zoom window here, you have the option, as I mentioned before, to start a new meeting, join by a ID, or look at your scheduled events that you've already got scheduled within Zoom. And you've got two options here. You can copy and send somebody your personal ID, or you can just click Start a New Meeting. Now, when I start a new meeting, you'll see the Zoom window pop up here at the bottom, and the original Sound for Musicians noise suppression will be disabled because that is the default behavior. So let's click on New Meeting, and I'll show you what I mean. It'll start up Zoom Workspace. And you can see here, original Sound for Musicians noise suppression is disabled. So that means that all noise suppression is disabled and Ecamm is taking care of your audio routing for you, which is just marvelous. Now, as I'm sharing my entire screen here in Ecamm, then obviously Ecamm is being shown in the Zoom window as well. So that's why we're getting a little bit of this infinite loop going on here where I'm showing you multiple things. But you get the gist. This is the Zoom window that you all know and love. It has all the Zoom controls over here. On the top right, this is just going to show you what application has been authorized to use with Zoom. And as you can see, it's got Ecamm Live here as well. And then all the standard Zoom controls are just the same. So anything that I'm going to be showing you in the Ecamm Live production is going to be shown here in Zoom. And if you click down here at the bottom, I'll just show you what that means in terms of video. I am using the Ecamm Live virtual cam. That's set up as default. I didn't have to touch anything. And then from an audio perspective, I am just choosing what I've got set up here. So it's the Ecamm Live virtual mic that has been selected by default, and then my output is my Rodecaster Pro to main stereo because that's how I'm using it now. So once you've set this up, it's set it and forget it, and everything works wonderfully. So let's look at now how guests come on and how they appear in the main window. What's going to happen is when a guest joins, they will actually pop up here, and then you have the option then to add them to your production. If you remember, we selected the preference to not auto add any guests, we're going to do it manually. And I've got a couple of scenes set up here to bring on some guests. Before we bring on some guests, just a word about numbers. So with the current Apple M series of silicon processors, you can bring up to 8 Zoom guests into your Ecamm Live production. And with the previous versions of Ecamm, you can bring up to 10 interview guests also at the same time into the production. So up to 18 guests in total using a mixture of Zoom and interview mode. But I will stress that you need to check the specifications of your machine and the supporting documentation with Ecamm Live's beta software before proceeding with these numbers. But anyway, let's talk about getting some guests on now and show you how that works in Ecamm for Zoom. All right, so let's get some guests on to your Ecamm Live production. I've set up a meeting already and 2 of our lovely guests have already joined. We have on the bottom here my lovely wife, Jess, and on the top left, you can see my lovely cat, Khaleesi. Now, they are in the Zoom meeting, as you can see here, and whatever I'm sharing on the top right is what they're seeing. Now, it's my entire Ecamm production in live demo mode. That's why they're seeing everything, but they typically would see what is ever in this main window here, which would be obviously me or whatever I'm sharing. But we're going to bring these guests in as regular guests into the Ecamm production. So on the bottom is the main Zoom window, and they've not been added yet to any placeholders in any of the scenes. So if I go to, for example, this second scene here, I've got a placeholder for Jess, which has not been added. And in the drop-down menu, if I try and add her right now as a camera source, she's not going to show up because we haven't added her yet here in the Zoom meeting. Now, when we set up the preferences earlier, when I add a camera source now as a guest from Zoom, they're going to get a notification that the Zoom recording is in progress. So let's just add Jess to the production. You can see that we've got the dialog popping up here saying record capture mode is enabled, something we set before, and I'm just going to add her now as a camera placeholder into the Ecamm production from Zoom. So you'll hear that we've had the recording in progress notification listened to by Zoom. That's been sent to us, and I'm going to add Khaleesi as well. She'll have to accept her own terms and conditions on Zoom. Now, Khaleesi is on the free version of Zoom, and Jess is on a paid version of Zoom. Now, we'll be able to look at the quality difference of those 2 cameras in a second as they come in. So in my first scene, in my second guest here, that isn't Jess. I'm going to change Khaleesi. And as you can see, the placeholders have come up already. So we've got Jess and Khaleesi as now placeholders for cameras. I'm going to click over to Jess. And you can see that Jess is coming in now into the Ecamm production. And this is a Zoom camera coming into Ecamm. How marvelous is that? So we've got Jess assigned, and just like any other guest camera coming into Ecamm, we can actually change and manipulate some of the settings. So let's go into camera effects real quick. And down here at the bottom, we can zoom and pan the camera just as before. So we can just zoom her in to get her a bit more centered. We can change the color if we want to, anything that we like. But note here underneath the name, we can see what resolution that camera is coming in to our Ecamm production at. And that's an important point. So we'll be able to distinguish if there's a free plan or a paid for plan. That will depend on the resolution of the camera coming in, whether the participant is using full screen and so on. Let's just quickly take a look at Khaleesi's settings. So down at the bottom, I'll just switch in the camera switcher to Khaleesi, very quick. And you'll see that she's coming in at 630p, so a lower resolution she's coming in at the moment. I can also zoom and pan Khaleesi. She's very comfortable at the moment, so I'll just zoom and pan her a little bit here on the left. And as you notice, as I'm zooming and panning, the reflection here is being shown in the main camera sort of zoom window as well. So that's really cool. So we have our guest that's joined the production, but what if we wanted them to share a part of the screen? Obviously they can do this all day long in Zoom, but I wanted to show you what it looks like if we now try and share something in Ecamm. So Jess, if I could ask you to maybe just share a Chrome browser in Zoom for us, please.
Sure, I'll do that and just share my browser.
So you'll see in the main Zoom window at the bottom here, Jess has now shared the browser for Ecamm. everybody should be going to that coming up in October of this year. And in the Zoom camera windows at the top here, you'll see that now Jess's sharing has come up as a secondary camera, very similar to what you would see in interview mode as well. So now I can add Jess's shared screen as a camera placeholder in my scene. So let's go to host and guest sharing. Here is Jess and I side by side, and now I'm just going to add a camera down here from the camera overlays. Click on that. Let's find Jess's shared screen. You'll see here at the bottom it says Jess Farrimond sharing. Click on that, and you can see instantly now I can add Jess's shared screen to my Ecamm live production. Let's just get out of live demo mode, and now you can see. Now, if Jess was to scroll up and down on that browser as if she was demoing or sharing us something specifically, then that would be exactly the same that you would be able to do in Zoom, and the quality is pretty good. As you can see, it's been shared, and there's only 8 days to go in order to get your ticket to create a camp. So that's great. So it's very easy to share the participants' screen, window, whatever it might be, in Ecamm. All the participants have to do is share screen, which is what they're very familiar with anyway, and it's super easy. Let me just go back to the two guest view just real quick and go back to live demo mode very quickly. Just one thing I wanted to point out is that the audio controls for the Zoom guests has now been added down here into the sound levels panel. That means that I have the ability to mute all the guests that are coming in. So if you've got multiple guests coming in, this is a global setting. So if I mute all guests that have come in to Ecamm via Zoom are now muted. In the individual settings up here, if you go to the camera at the top, you'll see these 3 little dots. You can actually mute guests individually from this view as well. But the actual volume and how they've got their audio set is down to the guests on their side. They can turn on their own audio processing if they wanted to. So in a nutshell, that's how you add guests to your Ecamm Live production from Zoom. It's a very familiar workflow if you're used to bringing interview guests in, and this added functionality now means that Zoom guests can come into your Ecamm production side by side with regular interview guests as well. So one of the great things about Ecamm for Zoom is the fact that we now have fully integrated comments. I'm actually streaming live at the moment, and everything will be shown in the comments and reactions view that you see here. I've got YouTube and Zoom running, and I've got Khaleesi obviously. And if we get Khaleesi to send a comment, as you can see, she is hungry and needs something to eat. But you can see that the comments from Zoom come straight into Ecamm's comments and reactions panel. The same applies for comments coming in from YouTube, for example. I am streaming at the moment, and you can see here that a YouTube comment has come straight into the same. So we have integrated comments on both sides, and that would apply if you were bringing comments in from Twitter, obviously, Instagram, and other destinations that are supported by Ecamm. Don't forget, we also have the option to actually post to the respective destinations, either YouTube or Zoom in this case, from the Ecamm Live comments and reactions panel. So we can just select one from the drop down, type in our message, and actually I'm just going to send a message here to Zoom via the comments and reactions panel. You can see it's a test from Ecamm, and it will appear here because I've actually sent this now to Zoom. And the same would apply if I wanted to send a message to YouTube, or I've also got the option to post to all. So if I now type another comment, I'm now posting to both YouTube and Zoom, and as you can see, both of these group messages pop up in the comments and reactions panel. So there you have it. It's pretty easy to bring in your Zoom participants as guests into your Ecamm Live production, but keep in mind Ecamm for Zoom is still in beta, and there may be some quirks and bugs that still haven't been completely ironed out. So I'd encourage you to join the Facebook beta group for Ecamm. There's also links in the description below to various resources to keep you on point for when you are testing. Best of luck with it, and obviously when this becomes a fully released version of software, I'll be back and doing another review and overview tutorial of how to use Ecamm for Zoom. But until then, have fun, play with the beta, and I'll see you soon.